Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what we've seen in both last week's hearing on AI and today's is how unprepared this country is to protect people's private information. This bankruptcy in the cell 23andMe demonstrates just how little control people actually have over their sensitive information. The few federal privacy laws we do have on the books have just not kept up with the internet age and the technological advancement. As a result, more and more of our data is just accessed by more and more interests, and it's just out there. Companies are handing over private data to the government that would normally be protected by the Fourth Amendment, for instance, and you would need a warrant to get. That includes genetic data at 23andMe. Some states have, of course, pushed for stronger consumer protections around privacy, but the data threats are not stopped by state lines. So people need protections that cover the entire country. Professor Hu, just briefly, what is your biggest concern about the gaps in privacy law that Congress ought to address through legislation?
My deep concern is the way in which AI is changing, I think, the nature of data. I think that, as it's been explained before, data is to AI the way that airspace is to aircraft. And without being able to have a way in which to really protect it and secure it, I think that we're going to increasingly see abuses, misuses, and discrimination flow from that lack of regulation.
Thank you. The patchwork of privacy protections in this country has created an ecosystem where data brokers and companies like 23andMe hold massive amounts of sensitive information for millions of Americans, and they can just really do what they want with it. Beyond just collection and storage of data, we should also be worried about how these companies use this data, including who has access to it. For one, law enforcement officers, there are few restrictions on law enforcement's access to DNA profiles stored in databases like 23andMe. The so-called forensic genealogy is often done without a court-approved warrant and can mean that law enforcement has access to the genetic information of millions of Americans with little to no oversight, even if you yourself did not give your DNA away. If you have a family member who did, you could be affected. What's even worse is that people usually aren't even aware that their profiles are being shared with police. 23andMe's current privacy policy states that when faced with law enforcement requests, the company will, quote, only comply with court orders, subpoenas, search warrants, or other requests that we determine are legally valid, unquote. Mr. Self-Savage, that last part is a bit concerning. What exactly do you mean by other requests that are legally valid? And what other request is going to get 23andMe to give over information to police?
Let me first say that 23andMe to date has not given any information over to law enforcement. We have a transparency page on our website which shows the requests that we've received from law enforcement. It's a small number, and those that we've complied with. And you'll see that it is 0 that we've complied with. The only way we will comply with a law enforcement request is with a legally valid process, such as a court order or subpoena. And to date,
yeah, I see that. I just really specifically, just really wondering about the other requests that we determine. I get that. I get the subpoenas and the search warrant, but there is a caveat for other requests that we determine are legally valid. Can you give an example of what that might be?
That is, I cannot give an exact example of that other. I can say that, basically the only way we would comply with a law enforcement request was with what we determined to be a legally valid process.
Thank you. I think that the fact that you can't define what that means is a massive loophole for 23andMe to do what it wants with people's data, and that's, I think, a really big concern. Mr. Self-Savage, also, how does 23andMe notify a customer when it has provided their genetic data to law enforcement? I'm sorry if you already answered that. What information do you provide them about the requests?
As I mentioned, to date, we have not provided any information to law enforcement.
If you did, do you have an example of how, do you know what the policy would be about how you would notify them?
I do not, but I can take that back to our team.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think these policies have a lot of room for improvement and that your customers deserve better, but it's at least a baseline, hopefully, of protection. Can you commit that 23andMe will not get rid of this policy regardless of who ends up owning it once the bankruptcy sale goes through?
I can say that the 2 bidders for the company have both agreed, both verbally and in writing in their contracts to purchase the company, that they will step into the shoes of the company and adopt the privacy policies and other consents on a go-forward basis.
God willing, I guess. It's really scary that people have to rely on the whims of private company to protect their private information. The Fourth Amendment can only protect us so much as these loopholes and workarounds need to be fixed. So I thank you all so much for your testimony today, and I yield back.